This is The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
They're running a strange program, y'all.
Now, here's Frank Morano.
This is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. Thank you for listening. And one of the things that I value most in my life is the relationships that I've maintained with people. I am someone that really tries never to let anyone go. You could keep wronging me, and to the point of being a total sucker, I will almost always forgive and forget. And my wife always takes issue with it. She thinks it's very easy for people to take advantage of me, and maybe that's true. But I am someone that really values the relationships that I've maintained and built over the years. And I'll be honest, this is not a totally altruistic pursuit, because I have benefited enormously from relationships that I've maintained over the years, professionally, personally, in every measurable respect that you can benefit from a relationship. I absolutely have. And so many of the relationships that I have valued over the course of the last 25 years have really been relationships that I've built in the workplace. Not just at the many radio stations that I've worked at over the years, for the many radio companies, I should say, that I've worked at over the years, but in a lot of other areas as well, as working at a minor league baseball team, even going back to my days working in a shoe repair shop, my Uncle Joe's shoe repair shop, working in my Uncle Steve's auto body shop, working in a fast food chicken restaurant, working as a wedding and event videographer. These are all jobs where I met people and I maintained those relationships and went out of my way. It's sometimes very difficult circumstances to maintain these relationships. I won't get into the details. But what now they're saying is that it has never been harder to make friends at work. They say it doesn't matter how interesting your water cooler anecdote is. It's never been harder to make friends at work. Some offices are trying to combat loneliness by creating spaces for coworkers to hang out and find their new office friend, right? Sometimes they call it an office bestie. If it's somebody of the opposite gender, sometimes you'll call it a work wife. And a work wife is totally, if you're not familiar with the term, platonic, or a work husband if it's the other gender. But I think this is really disconcerting. There's an article in the Associated Press a couple of days ago. Work friends can be hard to find. How to combat loneliness in the workplace. Now, I'll be honest. I think in this shift where, we're kind of on a different schedule than the rest of the world. So it's tough. I'll be honest. You know what I'm trying to do when this show ends? I am trying to get out of here as quickly as possible because I want to get to sleep so that I can be in a position to take care of my son after I wake up and pick him up from summer camp or school, and then begin preparing for the next day's show. If I linger around the workplace, in this case, the radio station, which is a very fun workplace, inevitably you end up getting caught up in conversation, both the friendly, inconsequential banter and, more substantive work conversations. When I had slightly more conventional hours, and I've never had totally conventional hours, I've never worked a 9-to-5 job, but when I had slightly more conventional hours, I would go out of my way to facilitate a lot of friendship, team building exercises with my coworkers. I managed several softball teams consisting of my coworkers. I would organize things like ping pong tournaments or outings to a local bar or things like that. I really don't do that anymore. I'm not the tip of the spear in terms of organizing any of that. If I do have an outing or something, a social outing, I'll always make sure to invite all the guys here. Sometimes people will show up. Elias came to a barbecue that we had at our house a couple of weeks ago. But I think this is a real problem, not only for the obvious reason of what the Associated Press is pointing out here, that people are lonely. But I think this is a big problem in terms of mentorship, in terms of not having someone show you the ropes about your potential career path. Additionally, so I think it's always important to have some mentors and some proteges. And the fact that, and I know there are some people that say you should never mix business with pleasure. And that's a very conventional wisdom approach. That's a very safe way of handling something. I never bought into that. Never bought into it. Perhaps it's because all the jobs that I've had have always been so fun. I always mix business with pleasure. I'll be honest. I can't tell you where my professional life begins and my personal life ends. I really, it's all a blend. You know, if I'm spending time with friends or family, I am jotting down topics for radio. If I meet someone that's interesting, I think, boy, could that person be an interesting radio guest? If, and vice versa, you know, it's all kind of cyclical. But I think this is a disaster for the country. I think it has gotten so much worse with COVID and the movement towards working from home. And now some companies are trying to do something about it. For instance, twice each month, executives at the dating app company Hinge gather for a team meeting. But rather than dive into discussions about metrics or revenue, they begin by simply talking. For the first 30 minutes of the 2-hour meeting, these coworkers reveal hopes and anxieties, what they worry about, what they're grateful for, what they're feeling. Even at a company focused on connecting people, according to this AP article, forging real relationships in the workplace takes effort. And as America navigates what the Surgeon General described as a loneliness epidemic, employers and employees across the country are trying to address what for many people is a lack of real friendships at work. The problem of loneliness is not a new one. It's been bubbling for a long time. Robert Putnam documented it 25 years ago in his groundbreaking book, Bowling Alone. It's gotten so much worse. And I think remote work has only intensified the problem. And I don't think this is just a problem for introverts. I think this is a problem for introverts and extroverts alike. I'll tell you one issue we would not have if I did this show from home, though. We wouldn't have these gnats flying around the studio. And now, like, I am concerned that I might have just swallowed one of these gnats. I have a kind of a like a tickle in the back of my throat, and I'm worried that I might have just swallowed one of these gnats. I didn't taste anything. Possible that they flew to the back. I don't know. Very. I got him. Got him. How many are there? Jeez. But this is not an easy subject to talk about. The lack of friendships at work, because it feels, as Bungay Stanier says, he's a like a leadership and management expert. It feels almost like a shameful confession, but his clients are beginning to bring it up with him. And awkward as it may be, these are conversations worth having. So I'm wondering what you think about this movement away from friendships at work. We were seeing fewer people meet for a beer after work. And I'm wondering what you think the solution might be. Obviously, the most obvious, I think, is just simply ending remote work and having people show up in the office as we all do. But I recognize, especially when it comes to young people, a lot of people won't even look at a job that doesn't give them the flexibility to work from home. So what do you think? 646-720-0635. 646-720-0635. I do want to comment as well, just because it is such a big story, on this story involving President Trump and the charges being dismissed regarding the documents case, but I'll save that for a little later this hour. So you can prime yourself to be ready to comment on that as well. All right. A lot of people have been very patiently holding. Let me squeeze in as many as we can here. Larry is in Brooklyn. Hi, Larry.
Yeah, hi, Frank. I just want to say I was just very disenchanted with your interview with that person. I'm sorry to have to tell you that, because you keep ignoring everybody keeps ignoring the elephant in the room. I mean, not everybody. You did. I mean, basically, you mentioned you think it's a conspiracy of ineptitude. Now, when the Secret Service agent had his gun trained on this on the assassin, the would-be assassin, and he was told by his superior officer to hold your fire until the guy fired, do you think that was mere ineptitude? Is that what you're saying?
Well, first of all, I don't know if that's confirmed, right? I saw that report. I don't know if that's accurate, right? That's what I asked. I asked Gary McCarthy what he saw as the big failings there. But look, if it
how could it not be accurate?
Well, what do you mean? How could it not be accurate?
The shooter himself admitted it.
When he got shot?
What?
When he got shot after he got his head blown open, he admitted it?
No. The guy who shot the would-be assassin admitted that he was told to hold his fire. He had the guy trained in his sights, and he was told hold his fire until he started shooting.
Yeah, I haven't seen him say that. I haven't heard him say that.
Oh, well, I mean, then it's conflicting. And I'm not conflicting if you didn't hear all the information.
All right.
I heard
that report. I did not hear that it was confirmed. If that is confirmed, Larry, I don't know what to tell you. Look, I'm not defending the Secret Service here. I think they really botched this. I really do. But
it's not a botch job.
So you think it's intentional? You think it's intentional?
Listen, I want to tell you something. First of all, they made an excuse. Rita interviewed somebody that made an
all right. Well, we don't need to get into mentioning. So you think it's intentional?
Without a doubt.
Okay.
This was planned. It's without a doubt.
All right, Larry.
And
well,
I would say something. He's in more danger now than he was before.
Yeah. You made that point yesterday, and I appreciate the consistency with which you're making it. Look, I am not someone that dismisses conspiracies. You know that. I mean, I give more voice, more air to conspiracies than almost anybody. But I think we have to at least see some evidence of that beyond just the circumstantial. So I think one of the things but I'm not scoffing at it, right? If there's evidence that suggests that that's the case, fine. But I think one of the things that I don't think people have an appreciation for is how inept so many different government agencies are. And to Larry's point, perhaps, I was a little perplexed at how it could take them this long to get into his iPhone, the shooter's iPhone, Mr. Crooks, because they didn't have the password. The NSA and the FBI, they have some of the most sophisticated passport hacking technology that there is. And yet, at least for a full day after they had the phone, they couldn't get into it. That struck me as a little odd. Is it because there's some massive cover-up within the CIA, as Larry seems to be suggesting? I don't know. It could just be incompetence. It's a shame when, as an American, you're rooting for incompetence. But it's kind of where we are. I'm starting to think maybe I did swallow this gnat. I feel like it's in the back of my throat somehow. I don't know. All right, 646 720-063. Something's going on back there. 0635. AJ is in Detroit listening on AM 910, the Superstation. Hey there, AJ.
Hey, Frank. How's it going?
Well, aside from the fact that I might have swallowed a fly, it's going just fine.
Well, I wanted to touch in on the topic of loneliness because you bring that up and it spoke to me a little bit because it's something I deal with. And I think there's a difference between being alone and feeling alone personally. And that's one of the things that I try to tackle. I don't work remotely like you mentioned as well, but at the same time too, it's like you're experiencing two different emotions at once. And I think the problem is getting worse. And I think with the other statistics in regards to mental health with men too, that could also be a factor as well.
So what would you do about this, AJ? If you were the manager in a workplace, what would you do to foster a sense of collegiality among the people that work there?
I would say just getting events going or trying to have a day where you get to or assign either a coworker or even like those what are those called? Like those Secret Santas during Christmas season. Like I did that with a group of friends this past year and I was assigned somebody I didn't even really know like that. And it honestly brought me closer to that person. So I think if a manager can do that with his coworkers, let alone just getting an event going or just something to be social with the other coworkers that you have at the workplace, just so it's a workplace that people want to be at and people want to go to.
Well, I like that idea a lot, AJ. I mean, it sounds like that would be a pretty fun place to work. Well, I like what you said also at the beginning of the call where you said there's a difference between being lonely and being alone, because there are a lot of times where I think being alone can be a healthy thing, can give you some time to reflect, to meditate, to read, or just to think. Right. And a lot of times if you're constantly caught in the rat race, you don't get an opportunity to do that. But I think what we're seeing in a lot of the workplace now is people just really not making any meaningful connections with their coworkers.
No, and I think that's what's killing that environment.
Yeah. AJ, go ahead.
Yeah?
No, go ahead. We'll finish your last comment.
Oh, sorry. And you mentioned that too. I through the 2nd through the 6th, the 2nd through the 6th of this month, I actually took work off. I requested that a month in advance just so I could get those days confirmed. And when I did, I took it was again that being alone stage where I did it for me, and I went outside, I meditated, I worked out, I did a lot of things for myself. And I felt so much happier, but I wasn't around friends. Like I was just with myself and maybe got lunch with like my dad or something. But like, if anything else, it was the best experience. And that was all being as alone as I could be.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Look, I'm a big believer, AJ, that when it comes to the workplace, when it comes to relationships, whether they be platonic or romantic, it's whatever works. And if that works for you, I think that's great. And maybe hearing from you will work for some other folks as well. 646-720-0635. Well, let me say hello to David in the Boogie Down Bronx. We're celebrating his birthday all week long. Hello there, David.
Oh, come on. Good morning, Frank. Listen, you know me when I tweet at you. Come on, you know I don't mean anything.
No,
negative,
I'm
really.
busting chops. Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, I didn't know about the history of that song. I didn't know other wrestlers had used it before Hogan.
If you listen to that, the 1985, what they call the wrestling album, when the hosts of that album, Vince McMahon, Mean Gene Okerlund, and Jesse Ventura, are introducing that song, because that song is on the album. That's how they introduce it. They don't introduce it as Hulk Hogan's theme song. They introduce it as the theme song for Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo, who were both inducted as a tag team into the WWE Hall of Fame this year. So, yeah, it's got again, Hulk Hogan took it over pretty quickly, But, Real American was indeed first used by the U.S. Express, Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo.
Oh, okay. You know what? I'll tell you something. I didn't start watching wrestling till WrestleMania 4, so I got into it after all of that, so that's why I didn't know that. But on the topic that you're discussing, I left the workforce 10 years ago due to losing my vision, and this was happening even before COVID and people working at home. I think a lot of it has to do with management, very poor management. I don't think managers are trained anymore on how to encourage coworkers to have a camaraderie with each other. When I was working in retail, I felt like I was basically working against a lot of my coworkers and vice versa, especially in a commission type business, because, there's no reason to be friendly with your coworkers. And then again, because so many people have family commitments like you do, there's no time to do anything.
David, that is such a good point. I have to pause here, David, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I completely agree. The time commitment is real, and so much else is. This is The Other Side of Midnight, straight ahead.
The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano. It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
28 minutes after the hour, this is The Other Side of Midnight. Going to go through your mail coming up in about 4 minutes. If you want to send me some email correspondence to be read on the air, you could certainly do so at frank.morano at redappleaudionetworks.com. That's frank.morano at redappleaudionetworks.com. We will give a read to the best, the most interesting questions or comments that come in through our email box. I also have a stack of snail mail here that I am going to be going through in mere moments. So tonight's the All-Star game. I am a Met fan. I'm a baseball fan. I'm a National League fan. Am I the only one that doesn't care much about the All-Star game anymore?
Let's go Mets.
Yeah.
Let's go Mets.
My boy. But I will tell you, for me, I don't know why. I think maybe it's because of interleague play. Maybe it's just because I'm gotten older and I don't follow all the players and all the teams anymore. I have really lost a lot of interest in the All-Star game. It doesn't do much for me anymore. I'll keep it on in the background. Although tonight, what day is today? I think, yeah. So tonight I have a bunch of other stuff going on too, but we'll see. I'll definitely put it on as I'm working or doing whatever. But to me, it's certainly not what it used to be. All right, let me hear from you. 646-720-0635, 646-720-0635 at 30 minutes after the hour. This is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. And in the meantime, let me hear from the original Rick in New Jersey. Hello, Rick.
Yes, good morning, Frank. Regarding the workplace friendships, I'm very sorry and surprised to hear this. I just went through all my friends, except for a very few that I grew up with, on the neighborhood and school. They were all of them are from past workplaces. These are friendships that have endured for 35, over 40 years. So I'm surprised that this is happening, although I do think, Frank, it's not something with management or something like that. I think it has to do with the type of job you have. If you collaborate with people on a job, like I worked in a scenic shop and we worked on the same project, we carried the same project, we installed the same project, you make lifelong friends. If you're in a cubicle somewhere, they don't even have open offices anymore where you can wave to somebody. You're in a little cubicle. You don't have the chance to make a friend. They don't give you chances in these new jobs. You come in and you basically don't see anybody and you go home. I think that's the problem. No one works together anymore.
I think it's a good point.
You and Matt and all of them work together. You know what I'm saying?
But do you know how Matt Blaze and I have seen each other once at a non-work function? So I think it's not like it used to be in general. My father met 2/3 of his wives at through work, right? And I think that was the norm. I just think for whatever reason, people are viewing work more as work, and they're viewing their personal life, for better or worse, as something totally separate from that. And I think it's for worse. I think I don't think it's a healthy trend at all, personally. Matt, what do you have to add on this?
Well, you know me, if I could work from home, I would. But doing what we do, there is definitely a different kind of energy when radio hosts work from home than when they are in the studio interacting with each other the way we do. Because I did work from home when I worked with the late, great Tommy G. And when we were on the air during COVID and I was at my house and he was at his house, we thought, oh, we're the same as if we were in the studio until we got back in the studio. Mm-hmm. And then we went, wow, there actually is a difference. It is better when you can actually see the person and react and, stuff that you don't see on the air, cueing each other and things like that you can't get when you're in two different places. Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I would completely, I think, but I don't think this is something that's unique to radio. I think this is now, and this is backed up by this AP article, this is pervasive absolutely everywhere, right? I mean, in almost every industry, we're seeing a difficult time that people are having in harboring these friendships. All right. If you want to find me on Twitter, you can do so at Frank Morano. That's Frank Morano. In just a moment, we are going to go through your email correspondence and good old-fashioned conventional mail correspondence, and then we'll get back to the phones at 646-720-0635, 646-720-0635. I really do have a lot of thoughts on the rather historic decision by Judge Eileen Cannon to drop the charges in the Trump documents case, but we'll get to that in a bit. If you're just tuning in, I am Frank Morano, and you are listening to The Other Side of Midnight.
Letters, oh, we get letters. We get your letters every day. Mailman, mailman, mail today. Reach right in and pull one out. Those letters, I love those letters. Let's find out what you got to say. Oh, boy! Mailman.
Yes, let us begin with the snail mail, shall we? If you want to send me some snail mail, you can send it to The Other Side of Midnight, P.O. Box 1777. Attention, Frank Morano, New York, New York, 10163. Again, P.O. Box 1777. Attention, Frank Morano, New York, New York, 10163. This comes from Patricia in Columbus, Ohio. What do we have here? This is snail mail. There's some articles here and a nice piece of paper. This is not pre-screened. The only thing I did in going through the mail was throw out anything that was obviously junk mail. Frank, you mentioned you loved apples this morning. Wow. I am returning 2 books about apples to the library later today. Endangered Eating, Americans' Vanishing Foods, Sarah Latman. One of the chapters is about heirloom apples. Varieties mentioned originated in northeastern United States, including lost, but I can't make out the word there, found in New Jersey, and one from Queens. Other lost or endangered foods in the book include wild rice, a small peanut, file powder for gumbo. If your library doesn't have a copy, check the app Libby for an e-copy. I promise you'll want to interview a few people mentioned in the chapter. Apples of North America, Tom Burford, updates in 2021. And then there's a lot of other Apple-related news here, and then she includes a playlist for her birthday, which I will absolutely take to heart when her birthday comes up in 9 days. Thank you, Patricia. Okay. This is a postcard. This is from Donna. This is a postcard from the Levian Bakery in the Hamptons. And she just writes, "Greetings from Donna. Chow from this yummy bakery." Thank you. Okay. Let's see. This one is from Brooklyn Boy Brooke. And there's a cat on it. Okay, this should be good. "Dear Frank, yes, I'm a cat." This is a postcard from a cat I'm about to read. "Yes, I'm a cat and one of your dedicated feline listeners. My human mom's a fan, and while I think it's great you advise spaying and neutering to alleviate pet overpopulation, I worry that listeners who have indoor-only cats will think, well, I never let my cat out. How's he going to get pregnant or impregnate and then ignore your excellent advice? It would make me so happy if you gave the very valid reasons every pet owner can relate to. Spay, neuter, are healthier, happier, have fewer cancers, etc. Thank you, Frank. Love, Brooklyn Boy Brooke." That is a very good point, Brooke. And out of the mouths of cats, right? I can see why you have so many lives. I will absolutely do that. All right. This is an envelope that has no... it's not really signed. It just says PDH in the corner. The envelope is the letter. Okay, so this is a sealed envelope, and there's no piece of paper in here. It's just that... wait a minute. There is a piece of paper in here. Okay, but there's a letter written on the back of it before you even get to the piece of paper. Let me open this letter here. See what it says. "Dear Frank, you commented on my limited talents. I hope one day I can say I rank you with the greats. I also am proud to say that you are more than a whipping boy for Curtis. Thanks, Peter from Harlem. P.S. Ask Frank anything. Why are real celebrities never guests on your station? Review Combs, Simone, Gary, Gray, Nebel, Lopate, etc. By the way, I completely dispute your characterization. We've had William Shatner on this show. We've had Steven Van Zandt on this show. Before he passed away, we had Danny Aiello on this show. Tony Danza's been on this show. I feel like we do have celebrities.
My dear Frank Morano.
Exactly. So I totally dispute that. Hey, this is a nice card from Miss or Mr. I think Ms. Snyder. Thank you, K.L. Snyder, for this nice card. Appreciate that. Okay. In the world of Facebook, let me see what we have here. Gary Freeman writes, I heard you and Dominic is misspelled, heard you and Dominic talking about the weakness of Trump tonight. Oh, he actually writes, the weakness if Trump tonight. You can always tell my critics by their difficulties with spelling and syntax. You really can. I dare either of you talking head wusses to show as much courage. F you. Very succinct. I don't know that I need to respond. And the Twitter user Florida or Bust writes, I'm listening to the woman singing the national anthem. If my mother was alive, she would say, that should be your biggest problem. Well, exactly. Nobody's saying it's our biggest problem. It was just sort of an odd choice for the national anthem. I think that's all anybody was saying. Jody writes, just a silly question. Are you related to the Morano family in Poughkeepsie? Ralph, Lou, and James. I am not, Jody. Unless they have money, then I probably am. But no, I'm not. Thank you. All right. Ellen is a terrific person and one of our most devoted and thorough listeners. She writes the following of last week's programming. And for those of you that are new listeners and didn't get to hear the program last week, you could just search The Other Side of Midnight in any podcast app. She says last week's programming was outstanding. The interview with Maureen Callahan was absolutely riveting, although it was very difficult to listen to her expose of the Kennedy family. I believe it was important to learn about their abuse and cruelty, as well as the media's complicity in keeping it from the public. I found your discussion with Professor Barry McDonald on the Supreme Court to be both informative and a bit concerning. From your discussion on the Supreme Court's recent decisions, it's clear that the court needs reform, but sadly, I'm not sure if this will ever come to be. Your interview with Dr. Trita Parsi was excellent. Your interview was challenging without being discourteous. I think you were more than fair. I know that some listeners feel that you should be more forceful with your guests, but I think your method is better. Why would anyone continue to come on your show if you were arguing with them? Instead of being confrontational, I've noticed that when you want to present a different opinion, you say some people might say. It's so much better to approach differences of opinion in that way. After all, you get more flies with honey. Although, I will say, we have no honey in here and there are plenty of flies. And by the way, I found his opinions on Israel very concerning, and I didn't agree with just about anything Dr. Parsi said. I detailed all of my reasons on your Facebook page. And if you want to check out the Facebook page, just search Morano Radio Fans and Haters. All right, Anda writes, I have a mostly 9-to-5 life here in Florida. I own a real estate appraisal business here, so working 9 to 5 is not really true, but I'm usually awake during the day. These days, I am up very early in the morning due to a very sick old deaf dog, so by 8 p.m. I am in bed. And problem is, by midnight or 1 a.m., I'm wide awake. That's when I go to listen to you. It is a pleasure. You put so much into your show that I love listening. There's a local station in Florida that carries Brian Kilmeade, Dan Bongino, and Mark Levin. Overnights are terrible. Thank goodness I found you. Listen, I'm originally from Long Island. I don't want to have this appear to make me out as a nerd of the herd, geek of the week, which I am, by the way, by gushing over your show, but trust me, it helps me overnights. That's awfully nice. And thank you. And I'm sorry to see that your dog is sick. I know how challenging that can be. Miss M writes me that she wants to know my favorite quote from a Mel Brooks movie. That is a real challenge because I am a fan of so many Mel Brooks movies. And they're all chock full of great quotes. I mean, even the bad movies, I mean, not that there are any of them are bad, but even the movies that are not as good as, say, Blazing Saddles or The Producers are chock full of great lines. For instance, I think most people would put near the bottom of his list, meaning Mel Brooks's list, in terms of quality, Dracula Dead and Loving It. Now, I love that picture, but there's no comparison in that to Young Frankenstein or Spaceballs or anything. But even in that picture, when Leslie Nielsen, because he's Dracula and he sleeps during the day, when he says, I was having a daymare, I just laugh and laugh. Lord, laugh. I think it's great. But if I had to pick one and only one, it's from The Producers. It's when Max Bialystock says to Leo Bloom, after they have a surprise hit on their hands with Springtime for Hitler, he says, how could this happen? I was so careful. I picked the wrong play, the wrong director, the wrong cast. Where did I go right? I still laugh just thinking about it. So that's probably mine. But honestly, I could come up with a dozen others. I mean, just in Spaceballs, when Rick Moranis and Bill Pullman are getting ready to have what's basically a lightsaber fight. And then Rick Moranis says, your Schwartz is as big as mine. Let's see how well you handle it. I mean, it's great. All right. This person did not sign their email. They write, hello, Frank. Hope this email finds you and your family well. Last night, a caller made a statement that caused me to be nervous and uncomfortable. He stated, and I will paraphrase as minimally as possible. Here goes. He said, Frank, I told you the Secret Service will not allow President Trump to be president. They hate him because he said he will fire all government employees, and the Secret Service are government employees. President Trump is being protected by individuals who hate him. The Saturday event was the making of the Secret Service, and they will try it again. Much to my surprise, your response was, I hope you're wrong. In my humble opinion, I think you should have engaged him to find out how did he know and whether he had firsthand information. Frank, we're talking about the safety and life of a man who's a husband, father, and grandfather. I was disappointed in you last night. I've heard you ask tough, challenging questions in the past. What happened last night? I always enjoy your show and listen as much as possible, even with the callers I sometimes disagree with. Signed, Loyal Fans in Maryland. For starters, that guy did not have any inside information. Look, you know when someone's speaking and they have inside information. The guy was talking out of his rear end. He's making it up. That's his supposition. So why waste the time? Right? Now, obviously, if something else happens and there's another similar incident and the Secret Service complicity, the joke will be on me. But let's hope that doesn't happen. All right. Anna writes on the subject of pennies. Hi, Frank. Weren't you talking about pennies a while ago? Last week, I took my cable box back to Spectrum to cut off my television connection, thereby saving $170 a month. I asked what my current balance was. It was $3.03. I gave him $3 bills and 3 pennies. Quote, no, we don't accept pennies anymore. Seriously? Yes, I had to pay with my Amex card. That's the only way that it would accept the 3 cents they charged me. Just one of life's little curiosities to pass on. Best, Anna. That is outrageous. Cash, including pennies, is legal tender to be accepted for all debts, public and private. You ought to complain. And look, I mean, no one wants to waste the time filing a lawsuit. But I would make this a big issue. A major company, which Spectrum is, won't even accept legal U.S. tender? That's not right. That is completely inappropriate. And I honestly think that that's against the law. I don't think you could do that. I know different states have passed legislation demanding that you have a requirement to take cash. All right. Scott writes, Frank, stop with that nonsense about violent rhetoric coming from both sides. Do better. Nobody constantly calls Biden Hitler, a threat to democracy, nor saying he's going to be a dictator, that he will be putting people into camps. I don't want to continue with the rest of this. You know, I'm not going to go out and list for you all of the negative things that President Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene have said about their political adversaries. I'm just going to reiterate what I said. There's plenty of overheated rhetoric on both sides. There is. I mean, you're just being naive if you think there's none.
How dare you?
Tom writes, Frank, I'd like to vote for David in the Bronx as listener/caller of the week. After your recent interview of the lady who wrote that scandal book with all the outrageous and hard-to-believe claims about the Kennedys and other famous long-dead people who can't respond, David was the first caller out of the gate. He then promptly said what I and probably many other listeners were already thinking, when, to make a long story short, he called horse blank. I thought it was very appropriate, and so I'm voting for David. Your interview in and of itself was excellent, however. Respectfully, Tom. Till the next time. And Pete writes of our ice cream truck discussion. Dear Frank, aside from the type of music played on ice cream trucks, I'm curious to know, will the current administration mandate that the trucks become EVs? The e-school buses turned out to be a disaster after billions were spent of our money. Maybe Kamala could embrace that concept, which will guarantee failure. That's a good question. I don't think there's the same kind of degree of regulation for ice cream trucks that there is for school buses. So I'd be a little surprised, more than a little bit surprised, if that were the case. So I don't see it. All right. If we didn't get to your letter, send me an email. We'll try and do it next time. frank.moreno@redappleaudionetworks.com.
Another letter from our listener,
The Other Side of Midnight. It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
Six minutes till the top of the hour. It is great to now be heard on WGN in Chicago. My thanks to Lisa Dent, who's on WGN every weekday afternoon. She was kind enough to invite me on her program yesterday. She's on for 4 hours every afternoon, and we had a great discussion. And she was very complimentary. And she got an SMS text message while we were chatting on the radio from a gentleman, I forget his name, either Robert or Roy, who texted her in the middle of the show to say that he heard our show. It's on its debut in Chicago, and he found it to be, I believe the word was beautiful, which is very nice. And Robert or Roy, and I'm sorry, I was kind of on the run as I was talking. I didn't catch that. But if you would like to send me an SMS message directly, you could feel free to do so at 816-8-MORANO. That's 816-8-MORANO. But that was very, very kind of her to invite me on, and I really appreciated that. It was very nice. She does a great show. People should absolutely check it out. By the way, I'll save that one. I'll save what I was going to mention. A lot of people are kind enough to call and hold. Let me get to as many as we can here. Julie, what is on your mind, Julie?
I was going to make a comment about on-the-job friendships. Mm-hmm. I think cell phones. People are too connected to their cell phones during work, too. People go shopping on them, and you have constant family contact with them. So I think that steals a lot of time.
I agree. I think in some respects, I think it all depends on how you use the phone, because I think in some respects, like you heard from Gary McCarthy, hopefully earlier, that in some respects, it can actually help you to stay in touch with people, either through text messaging or through social media or email, that you wouldn't otherwise stay in touch with if you didn't see them. But I think it's a good point. I think you have a lot of time being wasted on there and a lot of time just being frittered away. Thanks, Julie. Appreciate that. 646-720-0635. Let me say hello to Joaquin in Pennsylvania. Hi, Joaquin.
Frank, my friend, I wanted to actually say something about BlackRock. The shooter apparently was a extra in one of their commercials. But you know what? My brother passed away.
Oh, no. I'm sorry.
Yeah, one of my brothers. He had cancer for a couple of years. And, to eulogize him, he had a faith in Jesus Christ. And so when he got the condemnation or whatever, I'm sorry, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, the sentence of death, he was comfortable with it. And because of, again, his faith, in the Lord Jesus Christ, and he figured that, he was going to go to a better place. And, and he fought the fight, and he died pretty comfortably. I mean, he had hospice, and they gave him medication. He had, painkillers, and he had, things to relieve stress and anxiety. So he passed away peacefully early Monday morning.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Joaquin. I'm thinking of you and your family. I hope you're doing okay.
Yeah, I am. I mean, I talked to him a couple of weeks ago, and I basically I guess I did my grieving and my crying while I was talking to him, but it was expected. I mean, it was going to come sooner or later.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, your topics are interesting, and I want to get into something, but I figured I'd just bring that up, and spread the message of Jesus Christ in His name.
Joaquin, something tells me we will chat again. I have a funny feeling. All right. Your influence counts. Use it.